Hello, and welcome to First Flight, a Star Trek Enterprise rewatch podcast, where we are watching and discussing each episode of Enterprise in succession. First Flight is a proud member of the Tricorder Transmissions Network.
Welcome, Enterprise fans. We are your co-hosts, Abby and Chris.
And as you might have guessed from that wonderful beginning, tonight we are discussing Regeneration, the 23rd episode of Season 2. Regeneration was written by Mike Sussman and Phyllis Strong and was directed by David Livingston. It aired on May 7th, 2003. But before we begin our discussion, as always, we need to issue a read alert.
Tactical alert. All hands to stations.
There are potential spoilers ahead, and we might end up talking about any part of the series at any time. Plus, I'm pretty sure we're going to be talking about a movie tonight, so you have been warned. And now, for the summary of the episode, it's time for the Captain's Log. Okay, Chris, I can't wait to hear the haiku for tonight. Let's go.
Captain Starlog Supplemental.
Haiku for Regeneration. Cold killings in ice, metal and flesh roam hungry. A distant threat looms.
Ooh,
Bum, bum,
moody.
bum. Moody like this episode.
Yeah, for sure. I really like it. It is very image heavy, and that is perfect for this episode because I think anytime that you're going to talk about the Borg, there is some image from every single Borg episode that just gets stuck in your brain because they definitely have a look.
Yeah, it could be screwdrivers in eyeballs.
Oh, yes.
Or in Data's head.
Yeah, that too.
Or a single tear.
Yes. Or after you rip off your prosthetic, the holes that mirror the ones your dad had.
Yeah.
That one gets me.
Yeah.
All right. So, after all those little Borg bites, it's time to... I was proud of that one. It's time to deploy our subspace amplifiers and get into this episode. We'll start, as always, with a quick chat about my favorite cold open, and then head into our pros and decons section. Each of us will share two of our favorite parts of the episode, and then, if there are things that don't gel with us, we'll have a discussion on any decons from the episode. You might hear a dog bark in this discussion if somebody's Porthos Pick is mentioned, but we'll still discuss them later on.
Okay, let's get into this episode. And as always, we start with the cold open. Abby, it's your favorite thing. Jump into it. Let's hear it.
Okay, so my first three words in all caps and bolded say Borg on ice, which I realize now could also sound like some sort of like figure skating thing.
Yes.
But, which would also be funny to see the Borg on ice skates. But I love this cold open. I know it's a mental picture, isn't it? Seems dangerous with all the tubules that they have, but anyways, I love this one. I think anytime you see big weather in a space show, it's interesting because that means that there's a planet involved. And the fact that it's Earth is also interesting because we don't see a ton of Earth, even in Enterprise, which probably gets back to Earth more than most of the shows. You still don't see it that often. And I just think that's a super interesting way to start. And you don't know where this is going, and you don't know, what they're betting on or any of this. And then when you start finding Borg bodies, like, ooh, that's the way to cut it. And like, even though I kind of feel like we don't see our crew until 10 minutes and 53 seconds into the episode.
Yep.
So it kind of feels like it's a really big cold open, but I appreciate that they did it, the cold open, and cut it right there where the drama and like that wow surprise factor was the highest, and then came back and made Act One the rest of the exposition.
Mm-hmm.
So anything to add to Borgs on Ice?
Are their skate blades part of their bodies?
Ooh,
Made from that
fun.
alloy the scientists couldn't identify.
Yeah.
No,
There's some really serious toe picks on those skates.
yes. No, I had written down dramatic irony. The audience knows what's coming, but the scientists don't.
Yeah.
And I love the brilliant connection to First Contact. That's Enterprise doesn't exist without that movie. And so this is a fallout from that film that we never knew we needed, but it
Yeah.
makes so much sense that there would be debris from the ship. Now, would enough of the ship survive quantum torpedoes to like for the person that identified this was a sphere?
Yeah.
And the warp core is still intact down there too. There's
Yeah.
issues, but I really love this continuity between First Contact and Enterprise.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's always fun when you have a Borg episode to get the big like reveal, because it's never just like, oh, we might be engaging the Borg soon. No, they always come in with some drama. They destroy something, they show up somewhere that you don't expect them. Suddenly, there's a fleet, there's a something hiding in Jupiter. You name it. The Borg make a good entrance, and this is definitely one of them.
You can't say we might be engaging the Borg soon without hearing we've engaged the Borg.
Exactly.
And then the music swells.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The music in this episode is incredible.
Brian Tyler.
Yeah. Trek picks people who know what they're doing with music, that's for sure.
Yes. All right. So, Abby, can you take us to our first pro?
All right. So, I have to talk a little bit about something that I'm not sure I would have even picked up on as much if we hadn't been looking into the Phlox Archer relationship the way we have in the past probably 5 or 6 episodes of Enterprise, because I really enjoyed in this episode how you see this relationship even one step further. I mean, we've done a lot of, it really shows you the most of it when they're talking about feeding the slugs. Phlox has been tubed. He's can't really leave. Well, yeah, I sent you a picture of that pause. I had to pause on my rewatch and I didn't realize when I paused it until I looked back that it's right when the tubules go into Phlox's neck, and I'm like, oh, that's a terrible pause. I mean, wonderful, terrible, but he's been tubed, and Archer just comes over and he says, in this really, it's full of meaning, full of layers voice. If you need anything, call the bridge. And there's so much unspoken there. And, Phlox is saying, well, my slugs need to get fed. And Archer actually touches him on the shoulder and says, he's going to take care of it. He's going to send somebody down with them. This moment is the openness and the vulnerability that we have seen in the past few episodes with Phlox and Archer, and I think about in The Breach, they had that discussion, or they should have had the discussion, the one that you wrote as a microtracks, and this relationship, they are as close to equals as they can be on the ship, but they also have that respect, and we've talked about that. They have this unspoken understanding between them that has grown from them seeing each other in tough spots, and this is Archer's way of saying, I know you're holding it together. I'm not going to tell you right straight out, I'm worried, but I'm letting you know I'm worried. And it's just one of those moments where I feel that connection between them, and I really like it. And then later on, when Phlox isn't sure if the Omicron radiation is going to work on him, and he gives him the hypo to take him out, to kill him, to end his life. And that's no small thing. And the gravitas of that, and the looks and the unspoken in that scene between those men is incredible. So I could not let this one go, and I had to highlight it as my first pro, because there's just little bits of this growing relationship throughout this episode that have come from before in this season, and I love it.
Yeah, that's
That's well said. And it's almost like in that first scene you were describing, it's almost like Scott Bakula's playing it as if he's a person that is a friend of someone, a close friend of someone that just found out they were diagnosed with a terminal illness,
Yeah.
but no
Yeah.
one has said it out loud yet.
Yep.
Right? That's what that felt like. And that's how Billingsley plays it too. Like
Yep.
he of course he's working hard to overcome it, but there's just this weight of dread.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a different tone for Phlox. And they've done a good job with diversifying Phlox's tones this season. Just think of the crossing,
Yes.
right?
Oh,
There's
yeah.
that where he's kind of bumbling and like out of his element. And
Yep.
then there's the reach where he's kind of off of his back feet, like flustered and disturbed.
And then
go ahead.
Stigma too.
Stigma too. Oh
yeah.
yeah.
And then we see him with Fiesel. I mean, there's
Yeah.
there's just so many layers there. We see him as a professional, we see him as a husband, we see him as a friend, we see him as a colleague, we see him as a denobulan. Yeah, this has been a really good season for Phlox.
And right now he's a dying man, but also a man that could be dangerous to the ship.
Correct.
And he's terrified of that. So yeah, I love this pick.
What do you have to start us off with tonight?
Well, it's funny you should say Phlox is the focus of your first pick, because Phlox is the focus of my next pick, and is the Phlox Hoshi scene. I almost didn't pick this because I'm like, Abby's gonna pick this one, isn't she? I mean,
it's on my list, but
I love their friendship. We've talked about it so often, but I love that she's not talking to him in the same way Archer is.
Right.
There's not this foreboding weight. She's just openly friendly, like normal. Even when he's like, I see you're armed. She's like, oh yeah, it's Reed's idea. I'm supposed to kill you, or shoot you if you attack me. And she just says it matter of fact. Like that's how she's dealing with it. Like, this is just another day on this ship, buddy. Haven't you been around?
Exactly.
Right? Can I feed your animals?
How am I the one who's not nervous tonight?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. She's being brave and overcompensating because he's the one that usually is this for her.
I know.
Even in her imagination and vanishing point.
Yeah.
He is this for her. So she is being calm, but respecting him. She's not forcing her presence on him, but she's like, can I at least do this thing and like take care of your animals for you?
Yeah.
So it's a sweet scene. It's a good scene. We haven't had like a strong Hoshi scene in episodes. So I really wanted to call this one out.
That's a great pick. And like I said, it was definitely on my list as well. And I really like, we talk a lot about, Trip and Archer work things out while they fix something or do something. Hoshi and Phlox work things out over the animals. And I really like that because it's something, they're both so nurturing and they both have their emotions, closer to the surface than a lot of the rest of the crew. And I love that they've found each other. And I love all these little bits that we get of them. And it makes some of the things that we know are coming in season 3 just that much more intense and heart-wrenching because this relationship we know it has actually been fleshed out. It's not like, we know that Hoshi and Travis are friends, and when, she thought that the practical jokes about Jello and everything, and that's those are super fun, but we don't see that. We see it with Hoshi and Phlox, and every single time you can tell that they just enjoy working with each other. They enjoy, dropping things into the cage that somebody's rattling under the counter. Like they have fun with it, and they make it feel very real and very natural. So yeah, every time it's in an episode, it definitely stands out.
Definitely. All right, so take us to your second pro.
My second pro is when we have Archer and T'Pol chatting in the mess hall where he has his coffee with cream and she's drinking, I'm assuming, tea, perhaps passion fruit. And I like it because, again, this relationship is such a touchstone throughout the entire series. And you see Archer here. We've seen him a lot this season wrestling with ethics and wrestling with choices and with what experience and kind of the hardening of him, I guess, has done to him, because he realizes he's not the same man who left Space Dock, and that's okay. He shouldn't be, but you can feel sometimes, and this being one of them, where he's trying so hard to save everybody, and it's not working at all for anyone except Phlox, which we kind of knew was coming because they weren't killing him off. But it's so nice to see T'Pol there as that level, solid place for him to come, and he can talk with her, and she's always honest, and she has that slightly different perspective, but they have the back and forth. And I just was thinking to myself as I'm watching this one, and I ended up watching this episode 5 times before we did this, because I couldn't stop thinking about it. And there were parts I wanted to go back after I'd thought about it and watch again with that different perspective. And this was one of them, because I really sat back and went, when people say that, Archer got too extreme and was too much of a changed man in season 3, it's not, because he blew those Borg out into space. You see those bodies just boom, gone. And he was the one who thought of the idea. And he's having a hard time with it, but he's also living with it already. And you can see him working through it here. And that's shades of season 3 Archer now.
It's gradual.
Yeah. That's how people evolve and change. And we see it in this scene, and it's really good.
And like season 3, I'm sure we'll talk about it, but like in war, there are no clean hands.
Correct.
And Archer takes the burden of that on himself to achieve the mission. And he does that in smaller ways throughout season 2 as well. And it's like foreshadowing that major change, that the ultimate threat switches on in him in season 3. So I like that connection. I hadn't thought about that.
I was literally in the shower yesterday morning thinking about something else from season 3 and going, oh, wait a minute, that's just like this episode. And then that's one of the reasons I had to go back and watch it again, is because I'm like, yes. And like when you think about it like that, and you see even within this one episode, it's almost like this is a turning point for him, with the old Archer trying so hard and the feelings, and then the newer Archer coming in and knowing that he's got to do what he's got to do, and learning how to be okay with that. And it's something. It's definitely a pro.
Yeah, and when I got to this scene my 3rd time through, it hit me. Oh, in the breach, we had T'Pol and Phlox alone in the mess hall having a powerful conversation. And then we have it here. Like, this is good. This is like Guinan and 10 forward.
Yeah.
I like T'Pol being in that sounding board position because she's a good listener.
Yep, for sure.
Well, speaking of listening, that brings me into my second pro.
Perfect.
The score is perfectly matched to the material on screen.
Yeah.
It's not my favorite score of the series or in Star Trek, but it's perfectly matched to create the exact tone and mood of this episode. I love the repetitious strings and just like this lull, this low, growing, continuous tension that creates urgency and danger throughout. It's unrelenting and never stopping, and it's exhausting, and it's so well done. Brian Tyler could have easily given us the bong, 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 which I like, I love that. I wish we did get a little bit of that kind of sound. But I think the score was perfect and it really ratcheted the tension. There was a moment that I really noticed it in a good way when Trip and Archer are looking at the report from, the scientists, and they see a picture of the Borg, and Trip says, "Handsome fella," or something like that, right? And he's being jokey, but the music is not. Because the music is with us. We know everything about the Borg. We know what's coming. And it's that disconnect between us, our knowledge, and the characters, and the music being with us that is so interesting. And I liked it. I liked it a lot.
Well, we're going to give like a little half dog bark here because this overlaps my Porthos a bit. But yeah, this one, one of the things I noticed as I was going through, and like I've said before, I always make sure to listen at least once through on headphones because I think it changes the experience. And the music in this, I was noticing, is such a blend of what like first contact-y, Borg-y, what we've known before, like you just hummed for us, and typical Enterprise music when there's tense stuff going on. Like if you think back to like Silent Enemy or Marauders or things like that. And it's such a blend. And I think that's really neat because that's exactly what this episode is. And it's there enough for you to notice how great it is. And it's doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing, is highlighting the emotions that we're feeling. And I really liked how you could tell that it was that meshing of the two different types of story. And it was, like I said, like you said, perfect. And not my favorite score of the series, but a perfectly matched score to the story.
Well, and Brian Tyler's score feels more modern than typical Enterprise scores. That's not a denigration of any other Enterprise scores, but it feels a lot more modern, where there's not melody. It's just ambiance, like a sonic soundscape kind of way. Not quite all the way there, but yeah, there's not really a melody going on. We were in Horizon where we're getting flutes and oboes and French horns and all sorts of stuff. We've had our Night in Sick Bay music that also goes down to the swamps to the swamp
planet.
So a lot of variety with music in Enterprise. And this one just seemed very modern, that it could be in a piece today and not stand out as, oh, that's an artifact of an older time.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So, all right. So bring us to your next pro.
Okay, so my third pro for tonight is the wrap up of this episode. I really, really like, and I've got like three things together. I like Phlox explaining the hive mind. I like them figuring out that those numbers he kept hearing are pulsar and coordinates to Earth. And I love that line of, it seems like we've just put off the inevitable invasion. Like, ooh, like that is the way to end an episode. And I am glad that they left it right there. And with that feeling, that ominousness, and that, here's to Paul being very, very practical and saying, well, there's no immediate threat, if it actually happens, blah, blah, and we're going, it's going to happen. We know they're coming. And it's just the whole time through, you as the audience have been enjoying the fact that you know more than what the characters know. And that's not always the case in any type of media. But for this one, it makes it better to know this coming forward. And I love that this is one of the first times that we hear a non-human describing what the hive mind is like. And it kind of made me think about Zero and Prodigy when they were describing that. And I think it's so interesting. Every time we hear someone describe what it's like to be connected to the Borg, it's the same and different. And Phlox was just so precise. Like, you heard his doctor, you heard his analytical side coming out in that, but you also heard his emotion and the fear, and like how much of a toll this took on him. He sounds deflated in this whole last part. And I mean, granted, he just got some serious radiation. He's in his jammies at work. I mean, but it's just exactly the right tone to end it on. I don't want one more scene. I don't want one more shot. I don't want one more note. It is just a chef's kiss of an ending. So I had to call that out.
Yes. I can't add anything. It is a great ending. And, you know, again, the characters don't know what's happening or what's coming. We do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so glad there wasn't a follow-up. I'm glad there wasn't any more Borg in Enterprise.
Yep.
Because it's not meant for that. But this is a great connective thread between First Contact and what's coming in TNG.
Yep.
And this is what you have a prequel series for, these little moments.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and it's nice because it's very self-contained, but not. You know, it's like if Star Trek is a book series, this is like it's both it's like in the Hunger Games, how they wrote the story and then went back and wrote the prequel. Same kind of thing as I think about this because it's coming out. And it's nice because you can pick it up and it can be its own story. It's self-contained enough. It's well done enough. You can enjoy it. Or you can see where it fits in the bigger piece. And, you know, both ways are valid and both ways are well done. So it doesn't matter if you're doing one or both because it's a good story either way.
Well, and exactly. And if you had never seen any other Star Trek, this was where you started. This is an awesome episode. Super intense with this incredible villain.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, what's going to happen next? Now you might be deflated knowing, oh, nothing's going to happen next. But I have all these other series to check out where the Borg have a fingerprint on, bigger fingerprint than others, you know, Voyager. But yeah, I love how this exists in the prequel, which we're going to talk about in some decons. There's challenges with doing this kind of thing in a prequel, but I ultimately like it.
Absolutely. All right, so finish us up with your third pro tonight, Chris.
Well, perfectly segueing, I love that the Borg are presented as a fast-moving, intimidating threat. I love they're not these slow-looming zombies that we typically see. Sometimes they are in the show, but when they're moving through the corridors of Enterprise, they are rushing through the corridors. And just on the prowl, like this roaming cybernetic muscle, like, oh my gosh, I gotta get away. We don't see them ever presented that way, really, and they're genuinely more scary in this. And I am not one of those people that say Voyager diminished the Borg. I love what Voyager did with the Borg. I didn't love everything, Matrix Zero, but most of the time, like, it worked for me because humans adapt just like the Borg is slower and overcome. But that's a whole nother argument. I really love how the Borg are presented as threatening. And another layer of that is that assimilation in the way it's presented in Enterprise is so slow.
Yeah.
Allowing the victim to be aware of their horrific transformation. It's terrifying.
Yeah, it is.
Right?
Yeah.
And I've never had that experience with this episode. I've always had an issue with the way Phlox is like Phlox for a long time.
Yeah.
While he's being assimilated.
Yeah.
But it's more horrific in this way. So I really like that portrayal of assimilation. It's different. It doesn't quite coincide with how it's been presented for years. But I appreciate that choice.
Yeah, I always thought in somewhere way back when I first watched this a couple times when it was first on, I somehow in my mind thought that they said because they had been frozen for so long, they like the nanites were still, the nanoprobes were still slow or colder, or like they'd been affected by the deep freeze or something, so the process was slower. But they don't actually say that. But I like that theory as like headcanon, because yeah, that would make sense, that maybe that had something to do with it. Probably not, because space is cold and I can't imagine that Borg cubes are balmy. But well,
39.1 degrees Celsius or something like that, right?
exactly. So I just think that it is interesting to see, but it makes the episode much different than it would have been if everyone had succumbed quickly. And I always do think that about Flux. Like, how does he resist for so long? Is it a denobulan thing? Do we see more,
Yeah.
denobulans get assimilated? Is it like how the Romulans in Picard, they say that, the only Romulans ever assimilated kind of thing? I don't know, but it's interesting for sure. And it does make them way scarier.
Well, I was thinking for Phlox that, we've seen another species biologically resist assimilation, species 8472.
7-2, yeah.
And so perhaps the genetic coding of nobulans is really rich, just like species 8472, maybe perhaps less, more dense, I think is what the doctor said in Scorpion. But so I'm okay. I can do that kind of Star Trek headcanon to make it work. I would not say the nanoprobes are cold, but but perhaps they're severed from the collective hive mind, so they have less resources, whatever. We can talk
or they're
about
still
that.
powering up and they are not, fully at peak yet or something, because
Sure.
I don't know. Sure. I mean, make whatever headcanon you want. You're right that this is part of what makes the Borg so intense. Like when you see them climbing those ladders in the Jeffries tubes, they are hauling it. Like it's interesting. And I like how we saw non-humans getting assimilated in this episode too. And that's always interesting to see, and to see how that changes. Because I think it would have felt different too if it had been crew members, like Enterprise people, who had been assimilated, who were taking over the ship, and then you have to shoot them. Like this eliminated that whole issue of that type of morality, and let it just be they're scary. And that was a good choice for this episode.
Now, if there's a bad guy on Enterprise, just watch how they climb up the sick bay Jeffries tubes, because the way they do that's going to indicate how scared they are. Right? Because the Suliban
absolutely
climb up there really rough, and so do the Borg here too. So
there you go. Bad guys have ladder issues.
Yes.
All right. So on that note, let's move on to the decons, the parts of this episode that just don't gel with us. And I know we've both said that we have a few, and we've alluded to a couple. So, Chris, let's start with you tonight. What's your decon list?
Dumb scientists.
Does this go along with mine that says, yes, you should have frozen them, all in capitals?
Okay, just like maybe because we're sci-fi fans and like we see this is always an issue, but like there's no safety procedures, there's no controlled environment. And I wrote those decons after I watched this episode, a week or so ago, and immediately wrote my decons. I didn't write anything else. And then I let it sit for a while. And then I listened to it today, and I was like, oh yeah, the one scientist who got assimilated first, he was like, we should have this in controlled environment. I'm like, yeah, they knew better.
Yeah, they just didn't.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed. We'll just leave it there.
Are we of one mind?
We are of one mind on that, for sure.
We are as one. We are as one.
All right, so I know that's not your whole list. What else you got?
Archer and Reed's phase pistols work against the Borg for way too long.
Mm-hmm. Especially those Borg. They've already been shot at by better pistols before they crashed and froze.
Yes. Yeah. So, and they were fully assimilated at that time,
Yes.
So It was the weapons worked on the setting of plot, right? That was the plot
Yeah.
setting. So,
Yes.
yeah, that was it for that one. Three more. Flocks can cure assimilation.
Yeah, I know, right? That's one of mine too.
Now, with our previous discussion in my pro, it goes along with the whole idea that perhaps his genetic code's so dense, like species 8472, that, this is possible. But why does not Starfleet have a record that Omicron radiation is an Achilles heel to nanoprobes?
Uh-huh. Why don't they have records of any of this? Like,
Yeah.
Enterprise got the scans, so those have
Yes.
been transmitted to at least a few places. Somebody somewhere has
Starfleet Command got
Yes.
them. Admiral Forrest got them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So they're scanning the prosthetic arm.
Yeah.
All right. Like, yeah. Meanwhile, the doctor is dissecting a Borg on Voyager and noticing all the ins and outs of the prosthetic arm. Well, that should be in his matrix already because he has all doctor information.
Yep.
So that's just, that's an
And
issue.
again, plot.
Yeah, but the Borg implanted things on the ship that should have wiped their, computers of this information or whatever,
Yes. Yes.
But
or even some sort of like mysterious beam out or something later where you never figure out where it went and everything disappeared. I mean, I guess that's a lot like other episodes we've seen with the Suliban and the Temporal Cold War and stuff.
Yeah.
But just wrap it up. One line, one shot, one something about why we don't have any of this later.
Or, and this is going to be a micro track, I'm sure. Daniel shows up.
Yes.
And says, Jonathan, I have to take all this stuff that you've gathered. You can't have this advantage. Or something
that
like
would
that.
Be cool.
Right?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
That would be
I always want Daniels to show up with his time tube.
So do I.
He got tubed.
He did get tubed. Oh, Daniels.
All right. I have one more silly one.
Okay.
No one is working outside in that kind of frozen environment at night. It's not happening. It's too cold.
The same one. I know. And if you are, you better have every single piece of your face covered up or you are so frostbit.
You're not doing it. You're not doing it.
Nope.
So that's it. What are yours?
Okay. So I have a few that we've already talked about, but I also have a couple. Some are silly and some are not so much. But okay, first of all, I love Vaughn Armstrong. I love Admiral Forrest. Why was he in this episode? Like, he has this tiny little cameo where he's at his desk. And okay, first of all, his like assistant dude bursts in, and the research team is that critical that he bursts into his office and tells them, "We haven't heard from him in 3 days." 3 days? Why? Maybe after 1 day you can be concerned. Like, come on now. And then he gets up to the lab. He's got literally like 2 lines this whole thing. He gets to wear a fabulous coat, but they probably paid him reoccurring actor fees for nothing. Like, this could have been anybody. It could have been the head of Starfleet Sciences. Like, it didn't need to be Forrest. Like, if Forrest is in an episode, I want him to have some meat. I want him to at least talk to Archer. And the first time I rewatched this, I was like, he's got to call him later on and tell him what's going on. And he does. Screen. He says, right, exactly. He goes, "Get me Admiral Forrest." I'm like, oh, yes. Oh, no, because they don't actually talk. So maybe the episode ran long and that was a deleted scene and they actually had him in there with something else. And maybe that's where they would have wrapped up what happened to all the data and they're highly classifying it or something, or who knows. But I cannot get over the fact that Forrest was in here just to wear a fancy coat. So
okay, well, Miss Costume should like that. So
I do like the coat. I was noticing as a snow hailed on us here yesterday that I could use a coat like that. But yeah, it didn't need to be Forrest, but good job, Vaughn Armstrong, for getting one more appearance on Star Trek.
Well, and it also just reinforces the world that we're in.
Yeah,
when these characters just pop in and out. I wish Voyager did things like that. I wish other series did that. They didn't have to have a big role, but he's just there. And I'll
Yeah.
take him. I'll take any time we get to go to Starfleet headquarters too. For any reason.
That is true. Even though it's that same like establishing shot that they show in like 7 other episodes.
I love it.
I do too.
The Golden Gate Bridge, show it to me every time. It's like honey to my soul. I want to look at it. And I just listened to Trek Rank's episode on tropes. I think was that in Alex's secondary systems? The Golden Gate Bridge, you can see it from anywhere.
Yep.
Starfleet.
That was a great choice.
Oh yeah.
All right, I got a couple more. So the Borg, or as they're becoming Borg, how do they Borgify both ships so fast? And where does the actual physical matter come from? Like, do these Borg have early programmable matter? Because suddenly there's all these tubes and interfaces and like squiggly junction box things. And like, I get that they can tubule stuff, but they're not magic. Like, how does this work? So, but I think that a lot when things suddenly become Borgified. Like, how do you do that? Like, don't tell me you're carrying around a whole bunch of extra tubes and like those little sparkle things that go over their heads in their regeneration alcoves, the ones that look like lightning. Like, you don't have those hanging out in your back pocket. Where do they come from? But maybe there's something on the ship that they can cannibalize that quickly. But I always think that. I always wonder.
Yeah, and don't they grow? All the Borg pieces like seem to grow into place in the Jeffries tube.
Yes, that's why I'm saying maybe it's programmable matter, like really, really early, or whatever the Borg equivalent is.
It's the nanoprobes, perhaps. I don't know.
Do you know how many nanoprobes it would take to make one tube? Like, it's got to be billions. They're microscopic. So,
I don't know. Yeah, it's a good decon.
All right, and here's my last one. And really what it is, it's a missing scene. So Phlox gets tubed, right? And he has that nice scene with Hoshi. He has that nice scene with Archer. Why doesn't he have a nice scene with T'Pol? Like, I know things are going down. I know that everybody's busy, but they're close. Like, we've seen this. They have a relationship. Like, if you're going to talk about who Phlox really trusts and opens up to on the ship, she is one of them. And I really think she would have at least gone down there and checked in, touched base, offered what, like, I wanted to see what that would have been.
Yeah. Like, I
so
could
there's
see
the micro trek I want.
Yeah. Oh, I'm seeing it. I could see her offering meditation to quiet the voices.
Yes, exactly.
Right? Welcome to the seminar.
Yeah. Yeah. See, we've got this whole Vulcan seminar going. All we need is a Vulcan to teach it.
Yeah. No, that would be fantastic. And it coincides with another decon I forgot to put. Why does she just dismiss his statement about telepathy?
Yeah.
At the end, that always bothered me. Like, why would he just dismiss him like that? Because of the relationship we're seeing grow this season.
Yep. I think that some of my favorite episodes have really good Phlox and T'Pol moments, and I always want more of that. But I feel like in episodes that are really big for either one of them, you feel when it's not there. It really does feel like, and I bet you, and we say this all the time, but had they not been constrained by broadcast television time, I think there could have been like just those few more scenes that we've just mentioned, and it would have made it go from a good episode, even a really good episode, to a fantastic episode, because they would have had the time to add those tiny little beats in there that would have been more character beats, and it would have made it an even better episode.
Or even in the next episode, they're meditating because he can still hear the echo of the voices, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and then I want to see a T'Pol Phlox mind meld, right?
Yeah, I always have thought that. Yes, it would be amazing.
That's when we can get that whole backstory about him in the infantry and okay. I'm thinking like Laan and Spock, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
now we're just wishing.
Well, and it's so different nowadays because the Trek we're getting doesn't have to be constrained by what it did in the early 2000s, not
Yeah.
just with time, but with content and with subject matter and with language and visuals. Like it's more expansive now, so it makes you think, oh, these stories could be even better.
Yeah.
But it also could be, like when you let George Lucas go back and mess with the original Star Wars, and you're like,
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
not. So we say all this, but at the same time, this is a great episode. So it
Mm-hmm.
obviously did what it needed to do the way that it did it.
Well said.
Mind if we take a look? Prettiest set I ever saw.
All right, so we have come to our newest segment celebrating the artistic direction of Enterprise, the Viewscreen On. We like to highlight something that was particularly beautiful in the episode. And man, there were a lot of good images in this one. So, Chris, start us out tonight with your Viewscreen On pick.
It was just the most arresting, simple image to me. And I've kind of already hinted at it. I love the moment where the camera is swiftly pushing up to the Borg as they are just taking over an Enterprise corridor before they beam out. They like stop dead in their tracks and then beam out. Just the camera is the way it's pushing, rushing towards them. There's this dynamic physicality, threatening pace to them that I just love the way the camera is angled low, making them really feel threatening, and the speed at which it's rushing towards them. Yeah, it's just really cool. It's just really cool.
Well, I think David Livingston, who directed this episode, and especially after I have listened to Robbie Duncan McNeil talk about admiring him and shadowing him on Delta Flyers, I've noticed how many more different camera angles he uses in his, and how much more experimental. And they talk about some of the different lenses they use in things. And I agree, that is an awesome shot. And it parallels kind of mine because my shot is when they're coming, they're walking through the ship, the Tarkelian freighter, and they've just gotten there and they go up to that second Borg that they see in the alcove, and you get this shot that's like over the Borg's shoulder as if you're standing where the regeneration alcove wall would be, and it's over the Borg's shoulder, so you see him kind of like in 3/4 profile, and Malcolm's got the phase pistol at this Borg's head, and you can see Archer with his pistol out and his tricorder out, and like just the angle of it and the framing, and it's so interesting, and you're seeing all this Borg stuff, and then right there in the middle are there are two heroes, and it's an awesome shot. It's about 35 minutes in, and it's moody and it's just cool. So yeah, David Livingston has absolutely amazing directorial choices in this episode, and I think we just called out two of them.
When you were saying that, I wanted to know like how many Borg episodes did he direct? Because this is a camera movement and angle we have not seen with the Borg. So he directed Scorpion. And that and Imperfection, which is a Borg episode, but not, it's kind of
right.
And Infinite Regress. But that's it. I mean, but Scorpion's enough.
Yeah.
That's
a
major Borg. I mean, besides Best of Both Worlds, that's a big one. So he does a good job, and I like that he changed things up in this episode.
I agree. And before we leave this one, I'm not sure I would call this beautiful, but there's just two tiny little moments, and I'm hoping that this was his choice. I like when Archer and Reed both beam on and off the freighter. Both times they do the quick check to like make sure they have all their body parts, because they don't beam all the time yet. And I just think it is so funny. Like when they beam back, it's more obvious. But the first one, like they're beaming on, their pistols are out, and Archer still breaks eye contact with the scenery for a second just to check that he has legs. It cracks me up every single time because that makes you feel like you're in this world. Because yeah, they're going to this scary ship, but they still just beamed and they're not so sure about that. And it's just fun.
I joined Starfleet because I like beaming.
And that's why we love Lower Decks.
Yes. Yeah, but you're right. And one more thing about Livingston's direction, a lot of profile close-up shots.
Yes.
Tons of them.
Yeah.
And that's building that tension. Where we're really focusing on the actors and we can't see much. So there's like that tension going on. I love it. It's so good.
Yep. There's a reason that he directed so many Trek episodes because he's really good.
All right, because we like Data, he directed 2 TNGs, 17 Deep Space Nine, 28 Voyager, and 15 Enterprise.
Yeah, he's prolific.
Including Shuttle Pod 1.
Yeah. Well.
Oh, and Impulse.
That one had great angles too. Oh.
Yeah. Oh, I think we're going to see that whole corridor kind of camera movement.
Yep.
If I remember correctly. All right. Look forward to that one.
So, after all of those heaps of praises for the director, we still have more good things to talk about. We have come to the time where we discuss our very favorite parts of the episode, and it's our Porthos picks. And I know that we heard half a dog bark before when we were talking about music, which was mine, but we're still going to expand a bit more here. And I don't think we've discussed Chris's yet. So, Chris, what's your Porthos pick for this episode?
Maybe it's a quarter of a dog bark from before.
It's a tail wag.
Yeah, a tail wag. Okay, that's why I was silent. This is about, my pick is about how the threads woven into this story from Star Trek First Contact, from the Neutral Zone, from Q-Who, and Star Trek Voyager in general. And I love when Archer discusses Cochrane's speech. Again, in previous episodes, when Archer is talking about Cochrane, I love it. It's building this world. It's continuing the world that we're in. And just the fact, like, we're connecting to Star Trek First Contact, one of the best films in the franchise, but also the Neutral Zone.
Yeah.
Right? Q introduced us to the Borg, but they were already coming. Right? And because of this episode, all those colonies being scooped up, that was because of this episode. That was because of First Contact. It's that paradox, that loop that has to happen. Which means Picard has to go through the trauma, right? Which makes it sense that Daniels would come and remove all the Borg information they've gathered over time. That makes sense if, my head canon can be canon. And then, of course, I love the mention of the Delta Quadrant. And what do you think about when you think about the Delta Quadrant? The Borg and Voyager. So that made me happy, this Voyager fan. That is my Porthos pick. I love when we can clearly see the connective threads between all the series in this awesome franchise.
No, that was well said. And I think, how many times have we connected this episode tonight, both to the Trek that had already come before it when it came on air, and to the Trek that we're watching now, the new stuff, the modern stuff. And that is why this is a franchise that lasts. And I think that's exactly why this is a perfect Porthos pick.
Well, thank you. So what is your perfect Porthos pick? To get some alliteration?
There we go. Well, I texted you the other day that I'm totally cheating on this because I have to say that when I was going through and trying to pick what it was about this episode that I really like, because we had a whole bunch of cons, like more than what we have sometimes for other episodes that end up being kind of meh.
Yeah.
But I still love this episode. I watched it 5 times because I couldn't stop thinking about it and thinking about the layers of it. And I realized that one of the reasons why is because you can get so sucked into this world because of all of the other parts that are not the story. The music, the costumes, the makeup, the sets. This is post First Contact, And it
Yes.
shows because they have
Yes.
taken the time to really have these Borg sets that they reuse and recycle, to have the costumes be more intricate, to have the makeup be that like mottled gray growing that
Yeah.
we first saw in First Contact. And that's part of what makes this so creepy. Like Phlox, right before he goes into the chamber to get blasted with the Omicron radiation, and he's all gray and his voice is
Mhm.
weird and like he looks shriveled. Like, oh, it's so creepy, but it's so good. And it's because all that stuff is so much better because they did movie quality of it. So now they know how to bring that back to TV. It
Yeah.
makes it feel that much more real, that much more immersive. They all really layer upon each other. And it's all stuff we've seen before, but in ways that we haven't necessarily seen it before. And that is so cool. And it is like that bridge. I feel like we were talking about how probably what 6 months ago now, I did a little mini Borg arc with
Oh
the
yeah.
best of both worlds and Let Sleeping Borg Lie, and the Last Generation and Vox and all that. Well, this needs to be in there too. And then you watch First Contact, like this is part of that
Yeah.
Borg arc, and it's great because it is both the beginning and the middle of the story, and because of that you get all those different layers and times of Borg, and all the
Hmm.
stuff that makes them feel Borgy is just perfect in this
Yes.
episode. So the non-story elements of Borg really just shine in this 45
The
minutes for me.
production.
Yes.
Yeah, it
Yes.
really stood out to me too. Just the sound of what it's like to be on a
Yes.
Borg ship.
Yes. Or a
I
ship that wasn't Borg but is becoming Borg. Like it's
yes.
yeah.
It,
Yeah.
it's oddly comforting,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Well, didn't Paramount Plus after they did Wedge Douche and in Lower Decks, and they did that, the
Yes.
credits are is just the lower decks of the Borg cube and it's just Borg
Yes.
sound. They
Uh-huh.
put out a video that's an hour of it on loop. You can nap to it. Like
Yeah.
it's wonderful.
Well, it's because it's so familiar and consistent over time,
Yes. Yes.
and 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 it hit me today. Star Trek from this TNG to Enterprise time is so fortunate, and we're so used to continuity, even though there's not 100% continuity, but it's incredibly continuous
Yeah.
because it's the same production crew between all these different series.
Yeah.
This team didn't have to relearn Borg, what it's like to make a Borg production, a set, the sound. All of that is consistent because they did it last year or 2 years ago, right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
like even with Star Trek Picard, the Borg ships are different. They sound different. They look different.
Yep.
They feel different. Everything's different. That's not a complaint.
Yeah.
But this is a Borg ship. And it's the same
Yep.
kind of Borg ship we've been feeling for a long time, especially
Yep.
as developed in First Contact and then Voyager. So I really just marvel how blessed we were with that consistent brain trust behind the camera, making
Yeah.
everything fit together so well. What an incredible era that time was.
Absolutely. And it's why it's had to be my Porthos pick.
It's a great one.
Accessing library computer data.
Well, as you all know, because we are of one mind, we love trivia and behind the scenes tidbits. So we pick a few to share about each episode. So I am going to start tonight. And I want to start with the simulated snow for the Arctic Circle set. That was previously sought for the Aurora Penthe set in Judgment. So 2 episodes in season 2 where we have the cold, and they reuse that, I guess, salt to make that snow effect.
See, it's smart. They reuse the Borg pieces and the snow.
That's efficient.
It is.
And then the next trivia is the maintenance shaft sets were later reused as corridor sets of the USS Defiant in A Mirror Darkly. And they are also used in Babel 1, United, and the Anar in that Romulan drone set, which is pretty clear.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I love that they're reusing pieces like that. And we were just complimenting them for doing that. And here we see that they're doing it again. And that is both smart and makes for that beautiful continuity.
And it's also like it's become a Star Trek tradition now that even the animated series Lower Decks that doesn't have to reuse props and sets. They do just
Yeah,
for that
exactly.
internal consistency of the world.
Yep.
Because it's something that makes it feel like Star Trek. It's so
Yep.
cool.
Well, speaking of, that kind of leads into one of my trivias here. I want to call out two of the actors that are in this one, and one of them is the background actor Luis Ortiz, and he played one of the two Arctic Borg drones. And he had also played several Borg drones in First Contact, and
Mm,
he'd been a Borg in Voyager multiple times. So on set, he was known for teaching actors how to move like an alien and
mm.
behave like species, especially the Borg, because he'd been them so many times. So there we go with internal consistency again,
Love that.
which is cool.
I haven't had time, but I wanted to look up. Did they bring back the background actors that have been playing the Borg since First Contact? Because
Ooh.
those suits are expensive. So I
Mm-hmm.
still need to go look at that.
Yeah, well, obviously they brought back at least him.
Yeah.
And the other guest star that I wanted to call out in this one is the actress who played Rooney, the female scientist. And that's Bonita Frederici, who is actually John Billingsley, who plays Phlox's real life wife. And
Oh.
yeah, it's fun if you listen to the audio commentary on the season 2 Blu-ray. They joke that she got the part of Rooney by sleeping with Tucker actor Connor Trinneer,
Oh
which is such a
no.
fun callback to Stigma. So I love that an internal joke there that we get both in and out of universe. So that's a fun little
Perfect.
piece
Perfect.
for sure.
Something's not right. Hand me the Cretacean spice, I'll add it to the stock. Oh, and I'm out of carrots.
There are 25
Carrots!
All right, our fabulous carrot crew, we are trying out a new segment for this episode. We asked on social media for you to drop us an audio message of 90 seconds or less with your thoughts on the episode. And we had promised something fun for this episode, and we're trying this as a new form of mailbag. And if you don't hear your submission now and you still want one or you have another thought, feel free to send it to us. We'll give you all the information of where and how to do that at the end, and you can throw it into our final mailbag of the season. However, we do right now have 2 submissions. So, Chris, who's on deck tonight with some of the Carrot Crew comms?
All right. Well, we have tonight our friend of the show, Peter. I think it's at Peter Trek 1.
Yep. And if you remember, he joined us last season as a guest host one time. So we are thrilled to have his voice back on the pod.
That is right. And Peter, we're so grateful for you putting this entry into our regeneration episode. So let's listen to Peter. We have not heard what he has to say about regeneration, so I cannot wait to hear.
All right, here we go.
Hi, Abby and Chris. This is Peter Hong, aka Peter Trek 1 on Twitter. I would like to share my thought about Enterprise's Regeneration, which is my third favorite Enterprise episode after Twilight and In a Mirror Darkly. I like how this episode connects with the rest of the Trek franchise. It's a sequel to First Contact, as well as a prequel to TNG's Q Who. Captain Archer and the crew of the NX-01 did a masterful job handling the unknown threat. We as fans knew how dangerous the Borg can be, but Archer and his crew didn't, since they've never dealt with the Borg before. While watching the episode, we saw the progression of the Borg assimilation process, starting with the scientists' conversion of their spacecraft to use Borg technology, and later Phlox hearing the collective, similar to Seven and Captain Picard, and most recently Jack, in Picard Season 3. The NX-01 crew was able to defeat them, even though the Enterprise and her crew were from an earlier era with less advanced weapons and defenses. The ending was also left open-ended, which led to TNG's Q Who. Back in the early aughts, I recall there was some controversy about bringing the Borg to Enterprise. I, for one, was glad they did. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts about this episode. Live long and prosper.
Oh, Peter, this is why you're part of the Carrot Crew.
We
Because
are
that
of
was
one
amazing.
mind.
We are of one mind. That was like, if you wanted a 90-second recap of what we said, Peter just did it. So I love that. We are on similar thought patterns. Yeah, this is a fun episode. And I remember that controversy too. Back when, what was it, the Trek BBC that you, or yeah, that you would post on. And ooh, so everyone who says how nasty it is now, it has always been that way. There's always people who are going to fuss, but I agree. I am glad they did it too. What a beautiful connective piece.
Well, and I have a feeling like I'm remembering that maybe even the writers didn't want to do the Borg, but it was studio direction. So I don't know if that's true, but I can see how they wouldn't want to dip back into that well. But I'm like Peter said, I'm glad they did. And there's issues, but I think overall it's a really effective storytelling choice.
Agreed.
All right. Well, we have another entry to our call for your voices to be added to our own. And this is from @NotThatKevinHart. So, Abby, you ready to listen to Kevin Hart's thoughts on Regeneration?
Absolutely. I can't wait to hear from another member of the Carrot Crew. So here we go.
So I remember watching Regeneration live. My wife and I sitting there screaming at the television, "Do not unthaw the Borg. Do not unthaw the Borg." And that whole first sequence on Earth is amazing. From the pull-out shot where you see the Borg sphere to the horror movie sequence with the scientist, hearing something and then looking for her coworker. Bob, are you there? Bob?
No.
And so Regeneration, just one of the best of Enterprise, just fantastic. And, the fact that they suck them out of the airlock and you get the whole flock sequence with, hearing the Borg and starting to be part of the collective. It's just really, really good. Fantastic. A+ episode, probably 9.5, if not 10 grapplers. And who doesn't love grapplers? Shout out Leon soon. And love you guys, man. Keep up the great work. First flight forever. #Carrot Crew.
Yes.
Oh, Kevin, that just made my heart full. I love it. You are Carrot Crew forever. We're making t-shirts at some point. Maybe for season 3. We'll make some t-shirts because
we're gonna give you a golden carrot ball in the shape of a heart.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Yeah, I think his thoughts were right on point. You heard us giggling. We're like, do not thaw the Borg, do not freeze the Borg. Yeah, I agree. And Kevin sent another follow-up email when he sent this into us too that has something that I literally have been thinking about all day since I got it. And he called it snarky, but I think it's really golden. So I'm going to throw that in here too. So he says, isn't it cute when futuristic shows still depict the frozen North and South Poles on Earth? Sadly, it seems too optimistic given the state of climate change. So 100 years from now, when people watch these shows, they'll be able to critique our perception of the future, just as we do now with old books and media. So that one hits hard, but it is very true. And it's not snarky, it's honest. And I know you said before we started recording that Picard season 2 clears this up. We've got Renee Picard in the Europa mission to save us, but in reality, it's definitely something to think about. Those Borg would not have stayed frozen that long, most likely.
Yeah. What a great set of perspectives. And I really love how much he's focused on that the time we spent with the scientific crew and the horror aspect of it. Yeah, it was all really done. I'm not a big horror fan, but everything there was done well. It didn't go too far, and I liked it.
And Kevin, I love that you gave us a grappler rating. Like, that makes me so happy. And you know what? We love grapplers. So not only Carrot Crew forever, grapplers forever.
Okay, so one time Boimler dragged me to the Starship History Museum.
Dragged? You ran up to the doors.
No, I didn't. It was boring. I hated it. Anyway, so they had the NX-01 there, Archer's Enterprise.
Yeah, classic design. Plus it had, the grapplers.
Skip that part, they don't care.
I love grapplers.
See?
All right. Well, after that wonderful Carrot Crew Com section, it has come to the time for our final thoughts and grappler ratings. And we've already gotten one tonight. Thank you so much again, Kevin. But Chris, on a scale of 1 to 10 grapplers with half grapplers possible, how do you rate the episode?
I'm rating it an 8 out of 10.
Okay.
It's so watchable. It goes down so smooth, right?
Yeah.
I always want to watch the episodes many times in preparation for recording, but often all I have time for is 1, maybe 2. So the fact that I got 3 in before this is a miracle, but also it's because they just go down so smooth. There's not a lot of complexity. It's just good action. And it's not a 8.5 or a 9 or a 10 because of the decons that we listed. I think they're pretty sizable, but it also doesn't take away from the enjoyment of the episode. So I think an 8 out of 10 is a fine grappler rating in my book. What about you, Abby?
All right. So, I was thinking a lot about this one, and I think to myself, God, this is a good episode. And I've said that a bunch of times in between.
Mm-hmm.
But I also agree with you. I've had some cons in here that I I can't stop thinking about. But you're right. This one is so watchable. I mean, 5 times. I can't remember the last time I watched an episode 5 times within like a week span. Like even new ones. Like I just don't do that. But this one, and I kept finding more layers, which I really liked too. And I like everyone minus Travis has a really good moment in this, which I always appreciate. Sorry, Travis, you just get to ICERs and call out some coordinates and stuff. But
yeah, we didn't even talk about Reed.
Oh, I know.
He had some good stuff.
He did. That whole talk about the binaries, super cool.
Oh, yeah.
That was one of my hard cuts on my pros list.
Yeah.
And I like this one for all the connections that we see within the Trek franchise. I like that we see where season 3 Archer is coming from, and we see all of that in here. And I would probably watch it again.
Yeah.
Like if I had to watch it again tonight or tomorrow, I wouldn't be sad about it. So this one, and everybody always calls back to this one as such a good episode of Enterprise. And it's a wonderful self-contained story. But because of some of those decons, it's getting an 8.5 for me. But that is high praise. This is a fun, wonderful episode.
That's up there with what you scored, Ceasefire.
Yeah.
And Dead Stop.
Yeah, I know.
Those are your three 8.5s now this season. So it's in good company.
It is in good company. And, that's just because I tend to be very stingy with my very high ratings because the ones that I give, 9 and above to have to be ones that I would be happy to defend. This is the hill I'm going to die on. And this one is really good, but, we have those moments. So I think it shook out very, very well. And obviously our Carrot Crew really likes this one too.
Yes.
Okay, so before we finish up, let's go through a quick recap of our pros and Porthos picks and Viewscreen Ons for Regeneration. Run us through your picks, Chris.
All right, my first pro is the Hoshi Phlox scene. My second pro is the score really establishes and maintains a sense of urgency and danger. Number 3 is the Borg are presented as fast-paced, intimidating threat. And that assimilation, in contrast, is really slow, creating this awareness of your horrific transformation, which is a really interesting take on assimilation. So that's my 3 pros. My view screen on is that swift camera push up to the Borg as they're moving through the Enterprise corridors before they're beamed out. And my Porthos pick is just all of the threads, the narrative threads that this episode connects to throughout TNG, First Contact, Voyager. So yeah, those are my recapped picks. What are your picks?
All right, so that was a great list, and here comes some more. My first pro was when that you get to see the Archer and Phlox relationship really have a lot of depth and layers, especially after he gets tubed. My second one is the Archer and T'Pol chat in the mess hall about the choices and the ethics of this situation and the possible just destruction of the ship. My number three was the whole wrap up and that unsettled feeling that the episode leaves you on, talking about the coordinates of Earth and the collective hive mind and the invasion and all that. My view screen on is the shot from inside the freighter over the Borg shoulder from the alcove, where you can see the whole ship, the Borg, and our two heroes. And my Porthos pick is all of the Borg production value that went into this, all of the non-story elements that really made this feel like a immersive environment and that were movie level in a TV show.
That's so good. It's so comforting, that continuity.
Yes. Yes.
Captain, I'm detecting a vessel closing on our position.
Columbia to Enterprise.
Greetings, Enterprise fans. This is Melanie transmitting from the NX-02 Columbia with my thoughts on Regeneration. One of my top 5 episodes of Season 2. Do I love seeing the Borg on Enterprise? Heck yes. Is this a rollicking, tension-filled, highly dramatic, amazing, fantastic episode? Yes. Is there super cinematic music, excellent Borg design, great storytelling, directing, acting, sets? Oh yes. Not only is it one of my favorite episodes of the season and the series, but it's always struck me as a pivotal and transitional episode in the evolution of Captain Jonathan Archer. We just had a serious episode of Cogenitor. We're moving into the end of the season. Soon we'll be upon the Expanse. And for me, the Archer of Regeneration has always reminded me of shades of what we're going to see in the Archer of Season 3. I see him shifting into that Archer. The stakes are really, really high here. Grappling with moral dilemma and difficult situation Archer is the best Archer for me. I love the conversation he has with T'Pol here about what they're going to do when they catch up with this ship. She wants to destroy the ship. She sees what's coming ahead. She's very smart. She's giving her advice. Archer isn't ready to give up on the people yet. This is a pivotal conversation. It's really, really interesting. And then we get to the point where he has to open the hatch and have those aliens sucked out into space and basically, frankly, kill them. Now, Archer has had to take lives before. He did blow up a ship earlier in the series. I believe it was Silent Enemy where he blew up a ship. And, that really wasn't addressed. It wasn't talked about. It happened quickly. I've always kind of wondered about that, and actually I forgot about that right before I was going to record this. So Archer has killed people before, but there's something about the personalization of this time that just really had a big impact on me when he makes the decision. It's weighing on him. He's thinking very heavily. And then T'Pol says to him, "The junction is empty." That's her way of putting it. You had no choice. And just the look on his face. Again, this is why this feels like a shifting episode to me into what is to come with the Xindi arc. Archer will never be the same, and this kind of kickstarts that, jumpstarts that to me. Then we build to the part of the episode where Archer has been to the ship. He knows that, as he put it, there isn't anyone on that ship we can help anymore. And when you see that look between Hoshi and Travis, the serious look when Archer says that, there's some great drama there. I really adore the call out at the end about we've postponed the invasion by 200 years. Creepy and cool, There are so many great scenes and interactions in this episode that picking a Porthos's pick is difficult because there are many contenders. But I'm choosing a quiet moment here. My Porthos's pick is when Archer goes down to sickbay to check on Phlox, who has been affected, been infected, and is going through this process sort of towards the beginning of that, and asks him, how are you doing? Do you need anything? Checking in on him. And Phlox indicates that he needs some supplies to feed his animals. And Archer puts his hand on his shoulder and says, I'll have it brought down. I love this about Archer. Even though the stakes are high, there's a lot going on. It's very serious. He always takes the time to show that empathy, to check in with his people, to make sure they're okay. Whether it's putting his hand on his shoulder or doing that handshake where he uses both of his arms. He's a very warm person, and I just love this touching moment between him and Phlox. There's also a great scene with Hoshi and Phlox too. Just really great stuff here. In a nutshell, Regeneration is high-quality enterprise. It has feature film vibes and is very, very rewatchable. I love to watch this episode. I never get tired of it. Are there a few decons that take this down a half grappler for me? Sure. But no matter. Doesn't faze me. This is top-notch enterprise, and the director, David Livingston, always brings freshness and high quality to all of the episodes he directs. I'm giving Regeneration 9.5 out of 10 grapplers. And you can reach me on Instagram at shuttlepod.2, TWO, or on Blue Sky at shuttlepod2. And until next time, my friends, take care and live long and prosper. Columbia out.
My chronometer's running backwards, sir.
Incoming transmission.
You read my letter?
Well, we want to remind you that we adore getting feedback and thoughts from you, the listeners. As you could tell, we love to get your voices on here too. So we had so much fun sharing and discussing your insights and your ideas. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Kevin Hart. Not that Kevin Hart, but we want to get more. We want to get involved with you on social media, see what the next carrot balls, what the next Vulcan underwear will be. Will the next thing be about getting tubed, man? Whether it's being tubed by the Borg or tuned by Daniel's outfit, getting tubed, not good for your wardrobe. Anyway, I'm going off script because I'm tired, but here we go. We want more from you. We want to hear your voice, your grappler ratings, your Porthos picks, your Viewscreen On picks, or any general comments you have. So get them to us using the hashtag CarrotCrew.
Yes, please do reach out to us. Share any thoughts or smiles or anything with that hashtag. And here's all the information of where to find us and how to get us. You can reach us at First Flight Pod on Twitter or X, whatever we're calling it, Blue Sky, Instagram, and Facebook. We are on YouTube under the Tricorder Transmissions Network. You can email us at firstflightpod@gmail.com. If you want to reach me personally, the best place to find me right now is still on Twitter or X, and I'm trying for Blue Sky, and that's at Abby M. Summer. That's SOMMER. Chris, where can we find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Shelf Nerds. You can also find me on my YouTube channel, Completing the Shelf, and where you can find a lot of video essays on Star Trek. And you can also find me on Blue Sky as well under at Shelf Nerds.
So thank you so much for joining us as always. It is such a good time talking Trek with you, Chris, and hearing from you guys, our Carrot Crew. Thank you for spending this time with us, and we will be back next time with our namesake episode, First Flight, the 24th episode of Season 2. And as always, we leave you with this quote from Captain Jonathan Archer and your moment of Melanie.
The most profound discoveries are not necessarily beyond that next star. They're within us, woven into the threads that bind us,
all of us,
to each other.
A point from this episode that I didn't know where to put. It wasn't in a pro or anything, but I just loved it. And I know you know this too. I love host teams at every access point. Don't let them touch you. Right? I love them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's from two different characters, Archer and then Phlox.
Yep.
But I love those moments.
I know.
Love it.
I know. Well, this whole episode is just full of that stuff. It's.
But not direct lines like that,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's a good episode. I wish, like I said, I wish they had those other scenes. I wish we'd seen the call with Forrest. I wish Travis had something to do besides punch some buttons and say "Aye, sir." Yeah. But it's fun.
But I love that David Livingston gave the moment, the shot for Travis and Hoshi to exchange looks like they always do. But that is part of the rhythm on the bridge that they do, and it's important. It's really important.
Well, it makes it feel real because you know exactly who you can be sitting with in like a training, a meeting, or whatever, and do that with.
Mm-hmm.
And you look for those people because those are your people, those are your relationships that will get it, and that's makes it feel like a real universe again.
Just picturing all the other bridges and like the scenes that go on in them, in my catalog brain, the way the Enterprise NX-01 bridge is structured, that kind of look exchange is easiest. Yeah. Because like Voyager, that doesn't happen much. Everyone's so spread out and everyone's behind each other or in front of each other. And then Enterprise D, it's kind of similar. Maybe Geordi and Data, early seasons, they would look at each other, but that kind of went up. Anyway, so like it feels uniquely Enterprise. It's very good connection between those two characters.
I agree. All right. On that note, we both need to go to bed.
Yes,
it's so much earlier than it was last time.
Oh my gosh. That wrecked me the next day.
I know. I was just like, ugh. And because all day, it's really what I was thinking about. I mean, 400 texts between us that day.
Yeah.
And that one was all consuming.
Trivia soundbite.
No, we didn't do Porthos yet.
Duh.
It's okay.
Okay.
Woof, woof. So, after all of that...
Sorry.
Woof, woof. Okay. All right. Ready?
I'm ready.
We listen to that all the time now, and it's funny because we listen when I drive the girls back from school, and they know exactly how close we have to be before they can start I'm ready to time it perfectly for us pulling into the driveway. It's adorable.
So when I just looked at the screen, it says Regeneration Kevin Hart. I'm expecting like hard to get this review.
I know, and I love that his name is not that Kevin Hart.
Yeah.
How many times must the poor man hear that?
Oh, sure.
I taught a kid in kindergarten once who every time she drew people, she drew a colorful circle around them. And I finally realized she saw people with auras, and I like it. And her mom, I finally said something to her mom at fall conferences, and she was like, yeah, we don't tell people that, but she says everybody has a color and she can tell when things are like wrong with people and when they're sad.
That's
or
so
she
cool.
knew that, her grandpa had cancer before anybody else because she said his color was wrong and he went to the doctor and it was one of those things like the hair on your neck rises and you're like, holy cow. And this was the coolest little kid too. Like,
well, isn't that synesthesia? Isn't that the term for that? Yeah. That's really cool.
Amazing kid. I wish I knew where she was now because I have a feeling be very interesting.
Well, that's the thing. Like Geordi should have had that ability because he can see the full electromagnetic spectrum, right? They should have, used that. That would have been cool.
That would have been cool.
And LaForge remained below. So
I absolutely love that is now another insight. I think that might be the carrot balls and Vulcan underwear of this next chunk if this keeps up. Like,
I don't know.
because
It's not even an Enterprise thing, but
it doesn't matter because it was one of our button things. Either way, my friend Dave, who doesn't write into anything, but he's like my real life friend, and he listens. And I saw him at Ellie's birthday this past weekend, and he was like, he told me, he's like, that LaForge remains below. He's like, every single time I'm in my dishwasher now, and I'm just like, that's so funny.
Oh my gosh.
I know, right? So you never know the impact that you're having out there and the things that people are thinking now.
I gotta tell my wife that. That's funny.
Oh, it's way too funny.
Yeah.
Way too funny. All right. So we ready to get Borgified?
We're just gonna say you will be assimilated without saying our name.
I know, right? It's so it's yeah. But you know what I'm gonna do? I have from, as I stand up and move around for a second, I have from a couple advents ago one of those Borg cube shadow casters with a green fake candle in it, and I'm lighting it tonight in the honor of Regeneration. So awesome. It is really cool. Like if your room, the candles are like those little fake tea lights, but it's green. It's Borg green. And I actually have 2 of them because this is right before Eagle Moss went out of business, right? And they sent me a full beautiful box. Like it was one of those Borg cubes, but one of them had an empty day. Like there was nothing in it.
Oh.
And it was supposed to be a Botany Bay luggage tag thing. So I sent him a picture.
Botany Bay?
Yeah. But they didn't do anything. They said, sorry, we will resolve this after the holiday season, blah, blah, blah. You'll either be compensated or replaced by something else. Well, I kind of forgot about it because life got busy. And then all of a sudden in like the beginning of March, I got an entire another advent calendar. Like they didn't just send me a replacement. They sent me the entire thing. So I had doubles of everything, which was kind of amazing. So I gave a bunch of it to Melanie, and I gave a couple of things to another friend of mine. And like, it's kept a few. Like I have 2 Quarks bar bottle toppers now from that, which is awesome. And I have 2 of these cool Borg cube things, which is great because if I actually want to look like I'm inside a Borg cube, you need 2 of them to get any amount of light that actually shows.
Sure.
But it's fun.
That's
They're really
awesome.
fun. It is awesome.
Yeah, I'd like to get a Borg cube Eagle Moss model, but they're too expensive, and it's like I don't like really want. Like now that I have Voyager, I'm really trying to not get any more, and only reserving it if it's like an incredible deal, or if like I've been yearning for this one. So I feel like my voice is late night smooth jazz radio voice now.
All right, well, we'll take it, right? It will calm everyone down in this tense episode.
Yeah, all right. Let's do this.
Let's do this.